Merry meet, everyone. If you have questions about shadow work, energy work, or witchcraft, I've got answers for you. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. Every once in a while, I devote a special episode just to answering people's questions. So I have some questions that people have left for me or sent to me, and I am going to start going through those and answering as many as I can in this time. If you are here with me live, feel free to put your questions and your comments in the chat, and I will answer those ones as well. All right, so I am going to begin now so I can get through as many as I can. So the first question I have is from Angelica, and she said, I know that there's something magical about me, but how can I turn this on and open up my gifts? And she actually went on in this question to say that she was from COGIC, so this is Pentecostal. The Pentecostal religion was her upbringing. So I have a few thoughts that I'm going to share tonight about what you can do to kind of step into your gifts fully. And this is good advice for anybody, not just for Angelica, or anybody who's looking to really open up to all of their magical and spiritual abilities and really take them to the next level. So, first of all, with Angelica's upbringing, she said that she was Pentecostal. And so oftentimes in that church, and I'm not totally familiar with the Pentecostal religion myself. I was raised Methodist, but I do know oftentimes in the Pentecostal church, it might be all the time, they renounce evil, witchcraft as evil, and divination and different things like that. So that is going to be a disconnect with our upbringing and what we want to actually do as we're trying to step into our magical gifts. Now, some scholars have actually linked the Pentecostal religion to Christian mysticism, like a modern day Christian mysticism. So, what's kind of interesting about that is if you research Christian mysticism a little bit, you'll find that there were mystical rituals that the observers would do that would actually transcend reality and help them connect to the divine in a way that others couldn't do. So, honestly, in some ways, we might say that they're closer to witches than they think. Actually, in a lot of ways, they're closer to witches than a lot of the other Christian denominations. So, at the same time, though, there's going to be some kind of fear and doubt that you might experience as someone who kind of grew up in a religion that is telling you that these things, these gifts, and these abilities that you have are wrong or they're evil. And so the first thing you need to do is figure out a way how to get past that fear and that doubt. Because of all things, the fear and the doubt is what is going to hinder you the most. And so I'll just share a little bit about my own story and how I was able to kind of transcend that. But when I came to the craft and started experimenting with it, like I mentioned, I was raised Methodist, and I was raised to think that witchcraft was evil, but yet there was like this pull in me towards these things, towards this path. And I tried to make it work in my mind. I actually found Edgar Cayce's writings when I was a teenager. And to me, I've always said that was my gateway to witchcraft because he wrote from a Christian perspective. He talked about Jesus in his writings, but it was very mystical. He talked about ESP. He talked about telekinesis. He talked about lucid dreaming. He talked about auras. And so for me, that was the gateway. It really helped me kind of disconnect my fear and my doubt. But there was a lot of going back and forth when I was a teenager because I was really devout Christian at the time too. And so I was trying to make all of this make sense, what I was taught when I was growing up and what I actually felt inside. So over time, you eventually kind of get on the path and you just have to make a commitment like, I'm going to try this out. Because unfortunately, if we can't get past that aspect, our fear and our doubt is what's always going to hold us back. So just saying hi to those who are joining us. If you're here live, you can always put questions and comments in the chat. I'm just going through the questions that people sent me. So what you will need to do once you can get past that fear and that doubt about your abilities, you need to find some kind of an energetic practice that you can do regularly. And there's a lot to choose from. So in many of the older texts, especially if you read things from like I would say the 60s and the 70s, you'll see that people will talk to you almost exclusively. They talk about meditation, as meditation being this gateway, this way that we can open up the third eye and expand our psychic gifts. So if you can bring in a meditative practice, there's no way that that's going to hurt you. It can only help you. And if you're not someone who already meditates, I suggest trying to bring that in. If you're somebody who doesn't really like to sit and meditate, there are other forms of meditation like movement meditation, walking meditation, candle gazing. So you can look into those other ways. But that would be the first thing I would add in, is a meditative practice. Now, second, you need to find some kind of an energetic practice that you can do regularly, because that, working with your energy, is what is going to help you fully step into your gifts. So I recommend working with the chakra system because, while it's not the only energetic system out there, it is one of the ones that is well documented. You'll find lots of sources about it, and it seems to be very, very accessible to people. So what I would suggest is working with the lower chakras first. So this would be like your root and your sacral chakra and your solar plexus. So the bottom three chakras, if you work with those, you make sure that you're really grounded. Then what you find is, just by default, the energy starts flowing better. And then this is when the higher spiritual centers open up more. And that's when you really start to fully step into your gifts. You'll start to see lots of changes there. So a couple things that I would recommend too, as far as like strengthening your abilities, is to find some kind of a practice you can do regularly, like candle gazing. So candle gazing is very good. We just dim the lights and you stare into a candle. It's known to activate the third eye. So that's something that will help open up those abilities. Or third eye exercises. There are some movements you can do with your eyes. They're like these little meditative exercises you can do to really strengthen that energy center, because that's the one that's going to open up and connect you to everything. Or trying like a divination exercise. So one thing you can try is get a deck of tarot cards, for example, and see if you can pull a specified one. So for example, say I want to find the Empress in the deck. And then you see if you can pull it out of the deck. And you're not going to do it the first few times. It may take a long time, but eventually your intuition actually can get you to a place where you start to draw the card that you're looking for, at least one that's very similar to it. So that would be my advice, kind of get over the fear and the doubt in some way. You just kind of have to make that conscious decision. And it's hard because, it's a lot of years of upbringing that you have to sort of contend with. But after that, really find some kind of an energetic practice to work with regularly, meditation, and some kind of exercises. All right, so I hope that helped, Angelica. So the next question I have is from Nancy. So Nancy said, how do I tap into more energy? And how do I stop putting out more than I take in? I'm having a balancing issue with my energy. So this is a very good question. And I know that this is one that a lot of people struggle with. It's very tough for those of us who are more sensitive, more empathic, and more giving, because what happens is that we only have so much energy inside and we're giving away more than we have. So this is the conundrum that Nancy's in and that a lot of us are in. So here would be some advice for Nancy and anybody experiencing this issue. So the first thing I would suggest is making sure that you are as grounded as possible. Now, I know Nancy because she's in our Shadow Seekers membership, and I know she's been working with her root chakra. But I would suggest trying this grounding exercise if you haven't done something like this before. So in Chinese medicine and this isn't the only system that says that, but in particular in Chinese medicine, they say that all of our energy comes from the earth. So that means that we're constantly drawing in and replenishing ourselves by the way that we can connect to the ground. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be outside. I feel like you can still ground and connect on a floor inside. But what I would suggest doing is practicing some earthing if you haven't done it before. So take off your shoes and just get out and walk around. I suspect that Nancy's actually already doing this, but good advice for anybody, take the shoes off and really, really feel the ground, whether that's the grass or the soil or the sand at the beach. Just really, really connect to that. Now, after that, what I would do is you've got your shoes off. Now you're going to try this little meditation. So as you stand there, close your eyes. And what you really want to do is you want to focus on the bottom of your foot. So the bottom of your foot has a little tripod. And I'm not going to lift my foot up and show it here, but if you kind of imagine my hand is my foot, we have kind of that bony ridge that's underneath the big toe, and we have the bony ridge that's underneath the little toe, and then we have the heel of the foot. And so if you think of this as sort of a tripod, you want to really make sure that you're grounding down with all three spots on each foot. Because what happens is sometimes we stand in sort of strange ways and we're not evenly balanced. And those are the three areas where we can actually pull that energy up from the earth. So first of all, I want to make sure you stand there and you get those three parts of each foot grounded. And then from that, begin to consciously pull energy up from the earth, up from the ground. Pull it up through your feet, into your legs. Just imagine yourself doing this through the knees, up into the hips. Bring it all the way through the belly and then bring it to the heart on the in-breath. Okay, and then on the out-breath, you're just going to release it all back down into the earth. And you're going to start breathing like this. And this is just a way that you'll be taking the energy in and then just kind of letting it flow through you and out of you, and just start breathing like that. Do that for 30 seconds, a minute. And that can be very grounding. Not only that, you're bringing the energy up into you that's going to help recharge you. So what you also need to try though is, so that's going to help you, that may help you like fill the cup up, bring some more energy in. But we also want to be careful about how much energy you're expending as well. So you want to make sure that you're not giving more than you actually have, which I think is what a lot of us are doing. So you really want to consider clearing that type of energy, and a good place to do that, a good time to do that, is right before bed. So what I like to do is, before you go to bed, sit on the side of your bed, or you can even lay in the bed, it doesn't matter, and just close your eyes and just imagine the cords connected to you. And each of these cords that's connected to you is energy from somebody else. So maybe somebody you gave something to, right? Some of you to them, and you're still going to have this sort of energetic connection. But we don't want all that connected to us all the time. You've already done the giving, and now we've still got this cord connected to them, so we're still giving. We're still basically draining us of the energy. We may not even realize it because it's usually unconscious. So what I would suggest you do is clear all that out. So as you start to imagine those cords connected to you, I like to imagine there's like a selenite sword or a selenite athame in my hand. And then just go ahead and gently sever those cords from around you. It's not like we're severing the relationships in any way. It's not the intention here. We're just severing the energetic cords. That way, when you go to sleep, you're going to go to sleep with just your energy and not connections to all these other people. And that should help. It's a very simple exercise, but it usually can help people considerably. It also means that you're going to get a much better sleep usually. And then the other thing you want to do too is just kind of notice in your life, like, where is the energy exchange not quite equal? Where are you giving a lot more than you're actually receiving? And don't be afraid to say no when you have to. It's like one of the greatest gifts that you can do. Now, what happens is that we often will have a lot of guilt for saying no to people. So if you're experiencing guilt when you know you need to say no and you know you just need to focus on yourself in the moment, then I would work with the sacral chakra and the solar plexus chakras, and they really getting those energies aligned can kind of help release some of that guilt. So I hope that helps, Nancy. I'm going on to the next question. Again, anybody, I see more people joining live, so anybody who is here live, feel free to put in comments and your questions, I'll answer those too. So I'm just going down my list. So the next question was from Carrie, and I think that this question is a really interesting one because in some ways we might think of it as like a rhetorical question, and in other ways it's a really good question. It's something that I wonder about too, and I know that she does because she asked it. So she said, why don't people do shadow work? So why I said it's a rhetorical question is, in some ways it's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to answer it. It's just kind of like, why don't people do things that are good for themselves? Like, when we know it's, we're doing bad things for ourselves, why don't we change them, right? So it's that kind of question, like, is there an answer for it? Well, yeah, at least we can consider it. So here's some of my thoughts on why people don't do shadow work. So I think that some people, they're just afraid to face themselves. So it's just that kind of introspective work is just scary. It's hard. It's not fun. it can, I think it's fun, but you go through periods of time where it can be very difficult and deep work. And so people are afraid of that kind of commitment and that kind of work. Another thing I think is that there's people who have trouble admitting that they have a shadow side because our culturally there's many connotations in our society with the shadow being so evil and oh my god, I'm a good person. How could I possibly have this shadow side? The reality is that we all have it, and the more that we resist it, the more it persists, and the more it starts controlling what we're doing. We're not even acting authentically at that point. So I think, though, that a lot of people are afraid to admit that they could have this darker side to them. And I also think that some people just simply don't know what to do. So in that case, there's just going to be people who are never going to work on themselves. We're going to meet those people in our lives. I'm sure we all know them. But, if they are people who want to do work, hopefully they'll eventually stumble across something that will help them tap into shadow work or some other healing modality that can get them closer to their higher selves. But anyway, I think that's my answer to why people don't do shadow work. All right. Next up, we have a question from Lori, and she said, "How can I really get in touch with my authentic self?" She said, "I'd love to be able to learn how to not only live authentically, but to be able to, but be able to fear, know, or I think she said hear, know when I'm not. And I'm also wondering how to get in touch with my inner child." Okay, so she's saying, how do I get in touch with my authentic self? Want to know, when I'm in it and when I'm not. And then how do I get in touch with that inner child? Okay, so first things first, the authentic self and the higher self, some people use those terms interchangeably. I think that they are pretty, I think they're a little bit different. So I'm just going to explain the difference between them because I'm going to use them in a different way in this answer to the question. So the higher self is our connection to the divine. We would say this is like our closest thing to the soul, something that is going to persist after this incarnation is over. And our authentic self, to me, is the aspect of us that's the closest to that. It's actually in this incarnation. It's attached to the higher self, but it's actually incarnated here. So in order to be connected to the authentic self and therefore to the higher self, it really calls for self-actualization. And self-actualization is, if you've ever studied or heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a pyramid that shows the different levels of needs that people have. And at the very, very bottom are our basic needs like food and water and air. And a lot of this connects us to the root chakra. And then as we move up the pyramid and we have those things met, we will look for our relational needs, like the people that we love and we connect to, and that's kind of in the middle. And so many people actually don't transcend all the way up to the top. The very tip of the pyramid is self-actualization. And this is where we fully step into the authentic self, we connect to the higher self, and we understand exactly who we are. So it is the aim of something like shadow work. And it is something that many people don't achieve in their lives because they don't do any work and they don't know they're supposed to do any work. So first of all, I just kind of like to normalize that like not everybody gets there, and it's a process. So what I would say here is it's not just simply one exercise or something that we can do in order to do that. It's really a way of living. And so there are multiple pathways to reaching the authentic self. Shadow work is one of those. And in fact, there are some who say that shadow work is the most authentic path to enlightenment. I've said this before, I don't like extreme language like that because I'm sure there are other authentic ways to get there as well. This just happens to be an accessible way to do it. But the good news is, for Lori, who asked the question, she joined Shadow Seekers just yesterday, and so she's here in the membership. She's going to be able to do this kind of work. So what you will see, and this is for anybody, whether they're doing the work on their own or with a group, what you'll see is you start to analyze situations. You're going to be able to start seeing deeper truths, and you'll begin to find your authentic self that way. So it's simply just in that respect, it's simply just a byproduct of the work we do. So there's not necessarily exercises you have to do to connect yourself to the higher self. If you do the shadow work, eventually you find more and more and more that you're connected to the higher self and the authentic self. So what I would say though is in the meantime, for anybody who, wants to start doing something right now, the working with the sacral chakra and the body intuit and your own body intuition can be a very powerful way to start to communicate with the authentic self and start to understand what it's saying. So here's what I suggest doing. So there is a body intuition kind of exercise you can do. For anybody who joins the membership, we actually have a meditation in the membership that leads you through this process. But what you do is it sort of goes along the lines of how we would work with a pendulum. So when we first get a pendulum, we need to figure out where the yes and the no is. So we ask it a question, we ask it to show us yes, and we can test it by asking it questions that we know have a yes answer and seeing what it does, and then asking it questions that we know have a no answer and seeing what it does. So we can do the same thing in our bodies. So what you do is you kind of get into a light meditative state and you begin to say something that you know is true, and you watch and you listen. You have to lose all of your senses and just listen to your body, feel into it, and feel what happens. And then what you do is you say something that you know is not true. And now you again observe the body and feel into it, feel what happens, and see how these two answers are different. And if you do that over and over again, you're eventually going to start to connect. Oh, there's this sensation that happens when something resonates. And there's a different sensation that happens when something doesn't resonate. And this starts to be the way that you can tell if you are connected to the higher self or not. So it's a really simple exercise, and I definitely recommend anybody try it. It's really useful. It's like calibrating your own personal internal kind of compass. Now, as far as the other question she asked about the inner child, I suggest that people who want to work with the inner child start by going on an inner child date. So really think about where that little kid in you would like to go and see if you could just take them out there for a couple of hours and just hang out, the two of you. So it can be a really powerful experience and way to connect to the inner self. Something else that you can do is ask yourself this prompt or this question, like, when I was a little kid, what is something that I really wanted and I didn't receive? And sometimes people will answer this question with a material thing, and sometimes they'll answer it with a non-material thing. But whatever your answer is, see if you can get that thing. So if it's a toy, like we've even had people in Shadow Seekers, and I've done this myself, go out and get a toy that you always wanted. There's no reason you can't do that as an adult. And if it's something that's more of a non-material thing, like, acceptance or love, look in your own life right now and see, where do you see that? Where is that thing that you needed then? There surely is some aspect of your life where you could see a bit of that now, and invite the inner child in to experience it with you. Now, the other thing that I would say too is for Lori in particular, because you are in Shadow Seekers, all of April was all inner child work. So just go back and look at you could go and watch those April videos. There is a workshop on meeting the inner child. There is a ritual with Corey on working with the inner child. There's an inner child meditation. And there is also office hours. And at the end of the April office hours, there's some more inner child exercises. So that is particularly for you. But, for anybody else, just think about taking yourself on that inner child date and, get your inner child something that they really want. And that's at least the first way that we can start connecting to them. Oh, right. I'm going to pause here because June has asked a question. I got a few more I'll get to, but I'm going to pause and answer June's right now. So she said, after doing some shadow work, can it cause fear and others around you? Great question, June. So I don't necessarily know that it causes fear, though it could. So I think that what might cause fear for some people is if they don't understand what shadow work is, and they think that there's some kind of evil witchcraft that you're doing. That could be what might cause fear in other people. It would just be stemming from their own misunderstanding of what you're doing. But what I think it can cause is people start to see a difference in you when you do shadow work. And when you do it long term, you start to change for the better. And you would think that everybody around you would celebrate the fact that you're changing for the better, that you're stepping more into your authentic self, that you're feeling more vibrant, your gifts are opening up, things like that. But it can cause envy in some because they see you doing something to improve yourself and they wish they could do it, but they just can't for some reason. So it can cause envy. And then for other people, it can cause a desire for you to be the way that you were. So because you're changing and they don't want to change and they don't necessarily need to, but if it makes the relationship strained or something, perhaps they begin to pull away, or we start to realize that the relationships around us aren't quite what we thought that they were. So I'm not sure about your particular situation. It could be that they just don't understand the work that you would be doing, or if you haven't begun shadow work, maybe they've heard someone talk about it or you talk about it, and that causes them trepidation because they don't know what it is. But if you are doing shadow work and you start to notice it changing relationships, that is kind of par for the course. But at the end of the day, it makes everything better because your relationships become stronger with the people that are really important to you. And others, hopefully, we hope that our own work inspires others to do their own work too. That's what we hope. But sometimes not everybody's on the same page and they're not quite ready for that work. So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, because you said the dimensions of the relationship changed. Yeah. So it's pretty common. Even with myself, there were a few people that I realized that they were relationships that worked in the past. They worked with the past me. They just don't seem to work with the current me. And so for that reason, there were a few people who I just kind of fell to the wayside. I wouldn't say there was necessarily anything that happened that blew up or anything. It's just the the friendship sort of fell to the wayside because we just weren't in the same place anymore because I had changed and the other person hadn't. But some of the dimensions of the relationship will change because you're a new person as you're doing it. So just know that that's natural. It happens to all of us who do that kind of work. Um, all right. Yeah. And if you have any more questions about it, just put them in the chat here. All right. So I'm going to go to the next question. Let me find it. Okay. So this one's from Angela. And Angela said, do you have to believe in deities to be a witch? And I say no, because your path is yours and yours alone. Always yours and yours alone. So there's no right or wrong way that you have to walk your own path. So there are plenty of witches that don't work with deities, and it's absolutely fine to be one of them. Sometimes the case is the person just simply doesn't want to work with deities. Sometimes the case is that they don't believe in deities. What I do say is in that case, you can consider the deities more as archetypal energies, if that makes more sense to you. So our archetypes are symbolic representations of energy. We embody those roles in certain ways, certain archetypes we will embody in our life, and other people will embody other ones, and the energy in the universe embodies still other archetypes. So you can certainly think of the deities as archetypal representations if it makes more sense. And especially for you, Angela, because I know that you've come to a few of our Coven of Midnight's Flame rituals, and we always call deity in our rituals. And so just always feel free that when people call deity, if it doesn't really resonate with you, feel free to think of it as an archetype. So for example, if someone was calling Gaia, you can view this as the archetype of the mother goddess. And so this would have all of the connotations of what that archetype has: nurturance and fertility and abundance and compassion. So all those qualities. It's essentially what you're calling in, not necessarily the deity. And just make it make sense for you in your mind. Because, at the end of the day, we're the ones who know best what our path should be. Now, some people don't work with deities because they're not really sure how to work with them. And so if that ever were the case for you, or for anybody listening to this, if you're not really sure how to work with a deity, but you think you might want to, You can explore myths is a good place to start. Just think of some of the mythical stories that you have read and the different gods and goddesses in there, and consider working with a deity that you feel drawn to. Another thing you can do is if there's an intention that you have, perhaps you are working with I'll just use my own example because I've worked with the energy of fertility. And so, if a person were working with wanted fertility energy and to bring that into their lives, then they could work with a fertility goddess like Lakshmi or Yamaya or one of those deities, right? So that would be a way to just like start to connect, even if that deity hasn't like connected to you first. But and what I was going to say too is if anybody is interested in learning more about how to connect to deity, how to know when to reach out for one, or when to know when one is trying to connect to them, I am going to do an episode all on that in the next couple of weeks. So definitely check that out. But to answer Angela's question, no, absolutely not. You do not have to work with deities in order to be a witch. All right. Next, I have a question from Jessica. And again, anybody who is here live, feel free to put any questions in. I'm answering all of them here. Okay, so Jessica said that she said, I've heard you mention shadow work sessions before. What is a shadow work session and how do you know when you're doing one? Okay, very good question, because I have said that before. Okay, so much of the time when we are doing what people will call shadow work, we're actually trying to prompt a shadow work session. So I'm going to explain what that would look like in a second. I'm going to give an example of my own. So what we do in the shadow work is sometimes we're working with journal or kind of contemplative prompts where we're trying to ask ourselves deeper questions in order to trigger things inside of us that will help us sort of expand and figure out some deeper truths. Now, the other thing we can do besides this kind of prompting, these journal prompts, is we can work with our energy. When we work with our energy, we get everything flowing more optimally, which means that we are going to have a better chance connecting to that higher self, because at the very end of the day, the higher self is really what's helping us, make these kind of connections. So if we do enough of this kind of shadow work, and we can also do rituals where we actually try to facilitate a connection or spur some kind of a shadow work experience. Now, when we do enough of this, what will happen is that we will all of a sudden end up in a shadow work session. So what this looks like is this is a moment or several moments, could be last for several minutes, where all of a sudden we feel like we're almost like we're getting these cosmic downloads. It's like this large amount of information comes down into us, and all of a sudden we have the answers to something that has puzzled us perhaps for 30 years. Something going all the way back to childhood, or to our first marriage, or to our first job, or whatever. Like these situations that literally we have not thought about. We didn't think there was anything there. We thought everything was resolved, but yet it tells us, okay, this is something that is unresolved. We gotta look at this right now. So during that shadow work session, all of a sudden you'll have this kind of like aha moment. Oh my gosh, I understand finally what that was about. And we might understand a relationship better. We might understand a situation, a dynamic, something that has gone on. And it can feel, like I said, like this kind of like this cosmic download. So what it is important, I think, for us to note is that our shadow work, even if we know that shadow work needs to be done around something, we may not always have that answer right away in the beginning. So I'm actually going to share an example. I shared this in our Shadow Seekers office hours over the weekend. And when I shared this story there, I did not have the answer. And like an hour later, I had it. So I'm just going to share with you how the shadow work session worked. So I told the group about this person who had made a mean comment on one of my posts on the Body Mind Witchcraft page. Now, I get hate mail and I get mean comments all the time. People telling us that we're going to hell. I get all kinds of stuff. But for some reason, this particular comment really triggered me. And it was just basically stupid. So, there was nothing, why this particular one of all of them, it wasn't even the worst one I've ever gotten. So why did that trigger me? And so what I told the group on Sunday when we met is that I didn't know. I knew there was something here because I couldn't get past it. It was something I couldn't just like roll off my shoulders. And I knew that other situations similar to it had not bothered me. So I knew there was something underneath the surface. Okay. So at that point, I'm not really in the shadow work session. I'm prompting, I'm ruminating, I'm talking about it, I'm aware. Okay. Now what's curious is we hung up the Zoom call. I went about my day, and about an hour later, it literally was like this cosmic download came. It's like a light bulb went off, aha. And all of a sudden, I understood. And this was what was crazy. My mind started making connections. And I was able to trace this all the way back to when I was a little kid. And my mom would negate the way that I felt physically. So if I felt bad or sick or something, she would always tell me that I was okay. And it was like this disconnect, right, between like what I'm feeling and what is really going on. And she would do this like with my emotions as well. But see, the thing is, so what's interesting about it is it's like completely unrelated to what the guy actually said. What the comment is that he said had nothing to do with this whatsoever. But because I knew the guy actually, and I knew a little bit about him, um, and a little bit of his backstory, it actually triggered this thing that I was able to connect all the way back to my mom. And then I realize now that there is this aspect that I still have to work with. So without my shadow work, I don't think I would have made the connection. And what I would have done is just remained pissed about the comment and not gotten anything done. I would just be reacting, right? But because of the shadow work, I was able to take it to a deeper level. I diligently kind of did it. I just kind of like, I had the question in my mind. I sort of let time play itself out, go about my day, and aha, there it came. There was the connection. So, and that's what a shadow work session is. All right, hope that helps. That was to Jessica. All right, and Tiffany, this is the last question I think I have that was sent to me. So if anybody's here live, again, you can ask any questions, put them in the chat. So Tiffany said, I'm new to witchcraft, and she said, where do I start? Okay, so great question, because we have all different kinds of people in Body Mind Witchcraft. So we have very seasoned witches who've been doing it for 30 or 40 years, and we have people who are newer as well. So I think I would begin with some kind of a good book to just start, especially if you're a reader. Tiffany, I would start with a good kind of Witchcraft 101 book. So I'm actually going to show you two of my favorites. So I really love The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. This is by Christopher Penczak. He is a fantastic writer. He's got dozens and dozens of great books. This particular book is the beginning of a series. And this book is really, I think this is really a very good Witchcraft 101. It goes to the elements. It goes through all different kinds of things. I draw from a lot of this in my own trainings and teachings for my coven, because I just think he does such a fantastic job at laying this all out. So that's a great book. He also has a second book that's called The Inner Temple of Witchcraft. And this particular book is more about energy work and kind of meditation and mental work like that. He calls it Magic, Meditation, and Psychic Development, whereas the first book is more about kind of that Witchcraft 101. What are the Sabbats? What are the tools? What are deities? Things like that. If a person is actually interested in Wicca, this is a very good book, Wiccan Magic, and there's a second companion book called Wiccan Mysteries. This is by Raven Grimassi, and these books are, this is actually one of the very, very first books I ever got as a teenager. This book was written in 1998. So anyway, it's a very good one. If a person's interested in Wicca, it really goes through a lot. So I would start with some kind of a book. It doesn't have to be one of those, but get yourself a good Wicca 101 book or Witchcraft 101 book. And you can ask other people you know for recommendations. The other thing I would do is just what you're doing. You're in this group, so just join some witchcraft groups and start to kind of engage and listen to other people and see what people are doing, kind of absorb things that way. But my best advice for anybody who's really, really new is to think about what drew you to the craft in the first place. So is it crystals? Is it energy? Is it divination? Is it the gods? Is it the Sabbats? Is it the Esvets? What is it, right? The elements. So really focus on that thing, because there's so much out there. And I hear it all the time. People are like, I want to do all the things. But you can't do all the things. And if you try to do all the things, you're just going to get overwhelmed, and you're just going to do you're just going to dabble in all kinds of stuff. But why not really try to study something that you're really interested in? So if it is like elements, go look up elements, try to learn about that, ask people about that. But really ask yourself, what is it that brought you to the path in the first place? And start there. You don't have to learn everything all at once. And just kind of let your path unfold, see where it goes. You start to study the elements, and the next thing you know, you get interested in who knows, right? The Sabbats, and you start studying those. But take it one step at a time. If you want more support, don't be afraid to reach out to people either. I don't know where you live, but if you live in a place where there are metaphysical or witchy shops, a lot of times they're offering classes, and some of them are pretty affordable. And so feel free, to check those out and see if there's something that you're interested in. And it's a way to actually meet other people as well. So there used to be a website called witchvox.com. Unfortunately, it's no longer. And it was a place where you could just go and you could find local stuff in your area, and it's just not there anymore. But local shops is a really good spot to meet people and just kind of learn more. And then, if you want more support, you would reach out and try to find a mentor. There's people all over who kind of teach and lead people. I myself, we have a course called Demystifying and Deepening Witchcraft that is coming out in about 3 weeks. I'm going to start it, and it's a live course that I'm going to teach all summer long. It's pretty much all the trainings I use in my own coven of Midnight's Flame. I'm going to teach them all to everybody at a huge discounted price. So anyone who's interested in that, that is also a place where you can get some more information. Okay, so look for those posts. They'll be coming out at some point if you're interested in that. All right, so let me see here. So June said she has done some inner child work, but often feels like I have a stumbling block in it since I don't remember my childhood. Yeah, so that can be tough, right? If you don't remember any of it. And you're not alone, because I've heard that from quite a few people. They don't remember a lot. And in fact, I myself, I feel like I blocked out a lot of it. And friends that I've known for longer years will remind me of things that happened that I don't remember happening. So you're not alone. It can be hard to remember. So honestly, one of the things that you can do is just try to connect to that inner child. So search for like inner child meditations, things like that. Take your inner child on a date. Like I'd mentioned earlier, just see if there's something that you can connect to that they would want to do, because you don't have to know all the memories in order to work with the inner child. You just need to bring her, him, them into the present time with you. That's really what the inner child work is. You don't have to be going back and healing all kinds of things. It's just working with them here in the present moment will help you heal as well. So that's what I would try. But what you might find too, and I know people have said this to be true, and it was for me, is that even if you can't remember things in the beginning, as you start doing some of the work, kind of working with that inner child, in fact, like take them on that inner child date like every week or every 2 weeks, like make it a regular practice. Some of the memories actually they do start coming back. And then at that point, then you have something more to work with. All right, so I hope that helps. Okay, so if anybody has any more questions, put them in the live. I am going to just share a tiny bit about our Shadow Seekers membership while I wait to see if there's going to be any more questions before I sign off. So our Shadow Seekers membership is open right now. This is not the only time it's going to be open, so don't panic if you decide not to join now, but you think you might be into it. We are going to open again at the end of the summer, and we open again around Thanksgiving. There's always like a Black Friday thing we do. So there's more times to join, but right now we are open until tomorrow night at midnight Pacific time. So that's Thursday at like 11:59 Pacific. So this membership is a unique blend of workshops and rituals. We have office hours. We have a whole set of alignment practices, which are meditations and breath work, energy exercises, yoga, different things you can do to kind of get your energy centers aligned. And we also have a great small Facebook community where people support each other on their journeys. So if you are interested in shadow work and energy work and you want to take it to the next level, you don't want to continue doing it by yourself, the membership might be a good fit for you. So many people who do this work and many people who are in the membership, they're finding that their magical and their spiritual abilities are definitely increasing as they're doing the work. And they have more belief in themselves. They start to notice that their relationships are better, they're strengthening, they're better communicators, they're better able to deal with their triggers, like the things that used to irk them just don't cause all that in them as much anymore. And they start to notice that their intuition increases. So there's just a lot of benefits to doing the shadow work. And so a group like this is great because you don't have to wonder what to do. You have all the material here. So you have live things you can come to. If you can't, everything is recorded, and there's a membership portal that everyone receives access to. You can go back and watch all of the replays there. So it is a great value. We know that in some places they're offering this kind of support at like over $100 an hour or $100 a month, I should say. And we are not offering it for anywhere near that. So if you are interested, there's going to be a link in the comments below where you can go check out and see more information about it. I'm also going to put a second link below here that is the link to a shadow work, full-length shadow work ritual that we did last weekend, or not last weekend, last week. And it was a ritual with the goddess Kali to burn away fear and negative emotions. And I've heard a lot of great things, a lot of great feedback from people who've recently done this ritual. So if you want to let go of something, now is a great time to do it. Check out that ritual. It's very cathartic. It's really helpful to just purge some of the negative energy, and that's the stuff that's really going to hold us back. We start to unfetter us from that kind of stuff, you're going to feel so much better. Now, we also have Saturn turning retrograde on the 17th, and so it's a great time to do that video right now too, because if you can come into the Saturn retrograde period feeling a little freer, the work that you can do, the retrograde will ask you to kind of turn inward. It's going to ask you to reflect on some things. Some things in the external world might get a little tumultuous in your own life or just in general. And so being able to turn inward and kind of work on yourself will be very good. And the energy of that retrograde really facilitates that kind of work. So anybody who is doing shadow work, just know this is a great time to do it, but it's also a great time to join a membership because here you're going to have support and you're going to have guidance to do it, so you're not doing it all on your own. All right, so like I said, there's a link in the comment for the page where you can learn more about the membership. It's open until tomorrow night, 11:59 p.m. Pacific, and you'll also find the link to that free work or ritual, the shadow work ritual to burn away fear and negative emotions. So hope you try it and you like it, and if you do, you should let me know because I always like to hear how people experience the rituals. All right, so if there are no more questions, I'm going to sign off, but if you do have questions, you watch this back and replay later, put your questions in the comments. I come back later and I answer anything I didn't do in the live. All right, I will see you next time. Blessed be.